Dustin Rhodes suffers an injury on AEW Rampage this week. We have an update when it comes to Bandido in Ring of Honor after Tony Khan's purchase of the company. Tony Khan gives some more details about the Owen Hart Foundation Cup tournament that is upcoming. Plus, is Bret Hart headed to AEW? And Anna Jay wants women's tag team titles in AEW. All this and more in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. So let's start off talking about Dustin Rhodes and an injury he suffered on Rampage against Lance Archer. Now, you would have noticed this. If you watched the show, you would have noticed this during the match because Dustin Rhodes was bleeding actually quite heavily from the ear. Now, AEW star Dustin Rhodes has given a medical update following his match against Lance Archer on Friday's episode of Rampage on TNT. Now, Dustin Rhodes did actually win the match, which we'll talk about in a second because that was actually quite surprising to me, but Archer attacked him after the bout. Rhodes revealed in a video on social media that he had to get 5 stitches in his head and has suffered a ruptured eardrum. He said, quote, "Hey guys, rough night. Told you all I'd give you an update. Got 5 stitches in the head, pretty sore. The main thing is that I have a busted eardrum. Cannot hear out of it at all, but guess what? I'm in good spirits and not going anywhere." Now, Lance Archer did react to the video that Rhodes posted on Twitter saying, quote, "That's what you think." So it looks like this feud is going to continue. It was a weird one, to be honest. To be honest, I enjoyed the match. I mean, the fact that Dustin Rhodes is in his 50s now and he still looks great. He looks phenomenal. He's looked great for a while, in fairness, but he looks great. He can still move with the best of them. He has not slowed down at all. And the promo that they did on Dynamite of Lance Archer and especially Dustin Rhodes' promo that he did during Dynamite, I thought was great. And obviously it was in Austin, Texas, Dustin Rhodes' hometown, Dusty Rhodes' hometown as well. So I thought that's probably why they were doing the match. But I thought, and it's not because like it, as in WWE, when you're in your hometown, you lose. I just thought Lance Archer, he feels like a guy, AEW, Lance Archer, that they just build him up when they want to get a champion over. You know what I mean? And whether that's against, Cody Rhodes when he was winning the TNT Championship, whether that's Hangman Page for the AEW Championship or Jon Moxley, they've done this a couple of times with Lance Archer. They build him up for a big championship match, which he was never going to win. And then he loses, and then he kind of just sort of disappears or does really nothing of substance. And then eventually he'll come back and be built up again to eventually put over a champion. And I understand that's his role. Lance Archer, look, he's no spring chicken either. He's been around for a real long time. I remember Lance Hoyt in TNA back in the early 2000s. So the guy's been around for a hot minute. But I was really shocked. I was really, really shocked that Dustin Rhodes won that match. I felt that, again, Dustin Rhodes at this stage in his career, I understand that it was his hometown and all that kind of stuff, but I think that you always have to keep someone like Lance Archer relatively protected because eventually you'll need him again for that spot to put over a champion or for that spot to get over someone that's more up and coming. So I was really, really surprised that Lance Archer got the win. As I mentioned, you could say, well, Lance attacked him after the match, and who came out really on top there? Lance Archer's injured, Dustin Rhodes and all that kind of stuff. But I was just really surprised by that outcome. And maybe they will play that back on a future episode of either Dynamite or Rampage, but I was a bit shocked by the outcome. As I mentioned, during the match, you could easily see that something was going on with Dustin Rhodes' ear because it was bleeding and not, pro wrestling kind of bleeding when it's either a blade job or whatever. It looked really nasty. And, ruptured eardrums, they're no joke. They hurt. They really, really hurt. Anything involving the ear hurts. So thoughts go out to Dustin Rhodes. Hopefully he recovers soon. But as I mentioned, was really surprised by the outcome. But I enjoyed the match. I enjoyed Rampage on Friday. I thought it was a good show. I don't know what the ratings are. The actual official ratings will come out on Monday. The Fast Nationals, I don't even pay attention to them anymore because they're just so different. Particularly for AEW as opposed to WWE. Usually the Fast Nationals are pretty close on WWE and Rampage they're not. And we know why certain numbers get out on certain weeks. We'll put that there. But I thought the match was good. As I mentioned, I thought the outcome was a bit odd. Let's talk some Ring of Honor. And Ring of Honor with AEW now is quite interchangeable. That's because of Tony Khan. But we have an update when it comes to Bandido following Tony Khan's purchase of ROH. With Tony Khan's purchase of Ring of Honor and and their looming Supercard of Honor show less than a week away, fans may have questions about what's next for several popular stars of the promotion. Now, according to a new report from PW Insider, the man that never lost the Ring of Honor World Championship, Bandido, had a work visa under Ring of Honor that will expire soon. There weren't any plans to renew ROH's superstars' work visas while the company was on hiatus because, of course, everyone was released from their contract or their contracts were being allowed to expire. Now that Ring of Honor has been purchased by Tony Khan, it's still in question if he will sign Ring of Honor stars or renew any work visas. What's that situation going to look like? It is likely that Bandido goes back to working events in Mexico for the time being whilst this is all figured out, which will be a similar case for many of the international talents once signed to Ring of Honor. In a recent interview, Tony Khan himself spoke about the upcoming Supercard of Honor event and what will be in store for the show ahead of April 1st. He said, quote, "In 2 weeks, it'll be a very crowded Friday of wrestling. I had not scheduled this pay-per-view for the Ring of Honor Supercard, but I really think it's important for me because they've sold tickets and made a commitment to the fans to still do the show. I see it as a transitional show in many ways, and I'm really excited about it because it's the first show under the new management, and it's also a transition show before I will relaunch what I hope to be a really great new Ring of Honor television product, a weekly series wherever it does air or stream." So, again, a lot of people tuning in for Supercard of Honor expecting to see Tony Khan's vision of Ring of Honor. I think you'll be slightly let down in that sense. I think it's going to be very similar to what you've seen from Ring of Honor in the past with maybe Tony Khan touches. You'll be able to feel his influence on the show, certainly, but I think in comparison to what will eventually be Ring of Honor, it won't be the same. This is, whilst a lot of people saw Final Battle as the real true ending of Ring of Honor, and that's probably true, this is maybe, say, the epilogue, like in any comic book or book. You have a great story, you have the ending, and then you have the epilogue, which is the story after the story, that kind of situation. But Tony Khan's version of Ring of Honor really won't be born until after Supercard of Honor, because going forward, he's not going to do shows like this during WrestleMania weekend. He spoke about it before. That's one thing that he really doesn't do with AEW. As he mentioned before, like, if WWE's in town for WrestleMania, I'm not going to do an AEW show in Texas WrestleMania weekend because I just don't really see the point of it, and I want to differentiate from us, and I understand why other companies do it, and I do understand why other companies do it, because that's where pro wrestling is for that week, and there are so many fans that fly in from all over the world. It makes so much sense to do shows that aren't on WrestleMania nights and sell some tickets and make some money and get people booked, so that makes sense, but I don't think we're going to be seeing that from AEW and Ring of Honor, rather, in the future. Let's talk about Owen Hart. The Owen Hart Cup tournament is rapidly approaching. Of course, the finals are going to be at Double or Nothing in May. Now, AEW owner and president Tony Khan joined SiriusXM's Busted Open Radio to discuss the upcoming Owen Hart Cup, which is set to take place in May. He said, quote, "I'm excited. In May, we're going to start the Owen Hart Cup tournament. And before the Cup tournament starts, similar to the Olympics or the World Cup or a lot of the big tournament events out there, there's qualifying, pre-tournament qualifying, and we're going to have that for the Owen Hart Cup, both the women's tournament and the men's tournament, and I'm really excited about getting in there and finding out who's going to make the competition. I'll have announcements coming up soon about the Owen Hart qualifying matches, but I promise the fans these tournaments, both the men's tournament and the women's tournament, will be excellent." So, I've said before that I think the Owen Hart Cup tournament is going to be AEW's version of the King of the Rings. Reportedly, they wanted to trademark Owen Hart's nickname in WWE, the King of the Hearts, but they couldn't, or King of Hearts, rather, and I think that's what they wanted it to be. This is going to be, I think, AEW's version of the King of the Ring every year. And it's still kind of, honestly, it still staggers me somewhat. And I suppose nothing should surprise any of us when it comes to pro wrestling social media nowadays. But it shocks me the amount of people that are upset by this. Like, honoring Owen Hart's legacy is a bad thing. And they'll go, yeah, but he was never in AEW. It doesn't matter. Like, it was. In that case, anyone that was never in WWE shouldn't be allowed to go in the WWE Hall of Fame. It's nonsense. And people will be upset at, say, Martha Hart for going, oh, she's just doing it to get at WWE. And maybe she is. somewhat to a level, but also she's probably also hearing a lot of fans saying, we want to honor Owen Hart's legacy. We want somewhere we can get Owen Hart action figures. We want there to be a video game where we can play as Owen Hart. We don't want Owen Hart to be forgotten, because, and people say, well, he'll never be forgotten, but generations evolve, and and if they're right, if his name isn't out there as much, we will be introduced, or certainly Owen Hart will be introduced to a new generation of fans that maybe never watched his matches, right? He died, over 20 years ago at this point. So we're going to be introduced to, the people that have never seen him wrestle or never even watched his stuff on the network will be introduced to to Owen Hart. And that's great. That's fantastic. And again, go watch, say, the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, or go read up on everything that followed his way premature passing. And I don't blame Martha Hart. I don't. And people say, well, why can't his legacy be honored in the WWE Hall of Fame? Because in Martha Hart's eyes, and I'm assuming here, but in Martha Hart's eyes, that's the company that's responsible for the death of her husband. And she sees negligence in that. If you go watch the documentaries, the quick release safety clip was bad, and people can see that's on the stunt people. And that's true, but it happened under their watch, and I don't necessarily blame WWE for it, but also the way it was handled afterwards. The show carried on, and they tried to move the lawsuit to Connecticut so they could have a one-up on Martha, all that kind of stuff. It's not right, and I don't blame Martha Hart for going, no. I want, and previously, where has there been an opportunity to honor Owen Hart's legacy? WWE's been the only company around, and certainly one that's, worth trusting. So the people that get so upset about it, I really, you just can't have nice things, unfortunately, can you? Speaking of Hart, Bret Hart, could he be coming into AEW in the future? We spoke about this briefly before. There have been a lot of hints and a lot of teases. The Hitman teases began earlier this month, of course, when FTR fired their manager, Tully Blanchard. Dax then took to Twitter to ask, quote, Bret, what are you up to? The next week on Dynamite, FTR were confronted by the Young Bucks backstage, who told them they could hire, quote, the best there is as their new manager, but they still couldn't beat them. Dax then tweeted, God, family, professional wrestling, and Bret. But perhaps the strongest Bret hint came on this week's Dynamite following Dax's match with CM Punk. Against a pink backdrop, which of course is Bret's signature colour, FTR cut a promo where Cash said that Dax always wrestles from the heart. After the promo, Punk took to Twitter to declare, I love Bret more, which Dax replied, no you don't. So I mentioned before, I really don't think it's just a coincidence that Dax Harwood wrestled CM Punk on Dynamite this week. AEW loves a faction, and I could absolutely see a faction that's CM Punk, FTR, managed by Bret Hart, and maybe they put someone else in there as well. I really think that's a direction that they'll go in. Not because Bret's going to be a mouthpiece or anything like that, but just because he's Bret Hart, I think that's a real possibility, and given the fact that we've got the Owen Hart Cup tournament coming up, we know that Martha Hart's going to be there to present the trophy, and I don't know what the relationship is with Bret and Martha at this point. I know in the past it's not been great, and Bret said some things, and because Bret says a lot of things. But we know the respect that a lot of people in AEW have for Bret Hart, and I think it makes sense. The travel would be relatively easy for him at this stage in his life, right? In the sense of he'd be coming in for TVs, not even necessarily every week he would have to come in for TVs, but he could come in for TVs and they can make accommodations. Like Sting, in his 60s, is still flying in most weeks for television. They could do the same for Bret. So he's been open to it in the past. I remember seeing an interview where, this was a while ago, but him saying that he was open to becoming an agent for WWE, flying in for just maybe TVs, just for Mondays, for Raw. And WWE at the time said no because they wanted full-time producers. Nowadays, they have certain part-time producers, like Kurt Angle was a part-time producer before he was released by the company back in 2020. So I think Bret's coming into AEW. I really do. And I think they might save it until Double or Nothing, because he would, considering the lack of, as I mentioned, Owen Hart sort of just stuff over the course of the last 25 years, I think Bret would love to be there for that. Why wouldn't he? So I think Bret's coming in. I really do. Finally, Anna Jay has spoken about wanting women's tag team titles in the future. She sat down with Fight TV's Women's Wrestling Talk to discuss all things AEW. She revealed her hope that someday there would be AEW Women's Tag Team Championships added as well. She said, quote, "I definitely think so. We definitely didn't think it would happen anytime soon," which you never know. It was cool to get the secondary women's title. So I think if I had to guess, I feel the next title for the women's division should be a tag title. So hopefully that's the next one. I don't know when. I think we need to keep building and keep doing what we're doing before that happens, but definitely think that should happen in the near future at some point. When it comes to women's tag titles, look, there's plenty of titles that could be introduced to AEW still. I think the next bout that would get introduced would be trios championships. I think given their roster size, given the amount of trios they have in that company, I think that would be great, and I think it's a great way to differentiate themselves from other companies. I know Ring of Honor had 6-man tag team championships. 6-man tags, if they're done right, are so fun. I think that's why people really like the Shield, and because they just got a different pacing. The pacing of the match is so different. I think those will be the next bouts to be introduced. When it comes to women's tag titles, look, they're hard to do. That's the problem, is they're hard to do. You look at WWE, you even look at Impact, right, with the Knockouts tag titles, that it's the same as the men's tag team division. You need tag teams. You can't be putting singles peoples together constantly. You need tag teams, and you need a lot of them. And WWE's women's tag titles mean nothing. We've got a fatal 4-way at WrestleMania where all of the tag teams are singles peoples put together just for the match. Impact have done slightly better. They've actually had some proper tag teams, Fire and Flavor, The Decay, The Inspiration to be their tag champions, and I appreciate that. But even they kind of are running into all like, we need teams. We need to make teams. And there is plenty more that AEW needs to do when it comes to their women's division, as Anna Jay said, before I think they even consider it. Whilst I do think there have been dramatic improvements, especially in comparison to, say, 18 months ago. There are more women's matches on the show. The quality of the women's matches are better. The booking is better. There's still way to go. I mean, we saw Thunder Rosa in her first segment since becoming the women's champion get floored by Nyla Rose in just a bad segment. So I look at that and say, get all of that right, and then eventually we can move on to women's tag titles. But not anytime soon, in my opinion. I really don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't see the need at the moment. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.